Good evening. My name is Monica Anderson, and I have the privilege of being your host for this evening. For those who don't know me, I'm a widow of 4 years to Fabian Anderson, mother to Melissa, Alex, and Philippa, and grandmother to Israel, Harper Rain, and Mila. I have two in-laws, or in-loves as I like to call them, Liz and Matthew, who are married to Alex and Philippa. I'm a retired public and private sector manager, a very proud first-generation Black British woman, educated to master's degree, and currently serving as associate pastor at the Bentley Walsall branch of Church of God of Prophecy with Lemuel Johnson, who's the senior pastor. So welcome to our monthly live Women's Connect series. I'd particularly wish to welcome all of the women, men and families in the United Kingdom and from all around the regions of Church of God of Prophecy. So in Region 1, we have London, North and South. Region 2, Berkshire, Herefordshire, Bedfordshire and Buckinghamshire. Region 3, Bristol, Gloucester, Swindon, Stroud, Melksham, Trowbridge and South Wales. Region 4, my home area, West Midlands. Region 5, Yorkshire and East Midlands. And last but not least, Region 6, Greater Manchester. To all those that are joining us from abroad, whether it be Europe, the Caribbean, Africa, no matter where you are, it would be fantastic if you could put your country's flag on the social media platform that you're using. We welcome you all. You might note I've got someone sitting beside me and we'll introduce him a little bit later on. I'd also like to welcome Minister Joyce Fletcher and Minister Alni Powell, who along with their team are responsible for birthing the stimulating monthly Connect series. So here we are in the month of October, and I'd like to welcome you all to our Black History Month event, where we're going to explore the theme of reclaiming and changing the narrative. Throughout history, the contributions, voices and experiences of Black people have often been marginalised, distorted or even erased. Today we stand united in our effort to challenge, not only challenge, but correct these historical and contemporary narratives. Reclaiming the narrative means taking back control of our stories, ensuring that they are told from our perspective, authentically and powerfully. It's about reshaping history and the present to reflect the richness and diversity of Black experiences, achievements, and also struggles. At the same time, we want to recognise the importance of changing the narrative, not just for the past, but also for the future. Changing the narrative requires us to actively confront stereotypes, break down systemic barriers, and rewire how Black people are represented in education, the media, and society at large. Through this, we believe we are creating a new legacy that empowers future generations to walk with pride in their heritage, fully aware of the resilience, creativity, and leadership that represent in education, the media, and society at large, and also as parts of our story. As we gather today, let's remember that reclaiming and changing the narrative is not a one-time effort, but an ongoing journey. We are here to uplift Black voices, celebrate the profound contributions of Black people to every facet of society, and also ensure that these stories, our stories, are told truthfully, powerfully, and unapologetically. Thank you for being a part of this important conversation, and we look forward to a meaningful and inspiring event this evening. We have got with us today 4 very important people on our panel, and I'd like for them to introduce themselves. So I'd like you to tell us your name, a little bit about you and who you are, and what you hope to bring to the programme this evening. If I could start with Adele.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, hosts. So lovely to be here this evening. My name is Adele Rowe, otherwise known as Polly, and I'm the wife of Bishop Lanford Rowe. I'm, as I said, wife, a mother of 2 children, and also 4 grandchildren. I have been in the Church of God of Prophecy for many, many years, since I was about age 15, 16. And thank God I've never recanted from the pathway. And regardless of challenges, I've held on, and hitherto has the Lord helped me. What I hope to bring to the panel this evening is I do have some knowledge of the Church of God of Prophecy and the inception in the United Kingdom. And as we progress during this session, I'm hoping to bring a little bit more history in terms of buildings that were purchased and etc. etc. Thank you for listening.
Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Jasmine Burke. I am from the last but not least Region 6, Manchester. My home church is Restoration House, Moss Lane East. A little bit about me. I am a worship leader. I am a youth leader. I am the youngest sibling in my family. There's only 2 of us, but I'm still the baby. And I am the first one in my family to go to university. Of that, I am very proud. Um, what else can I say? I like to read. I like to sing. I like to be out in nature. What I hope to bring to the session today, I hope to bring a perspective from a young-ish person. I'm not exactly super young, but I hope to bring a perspective from a young-ish person and how those narratives may have changed in these current times, and what we have learned from the older generation. Over to Anne-Marie.
Hi everyone, good evening. My name is Anne-Marie Sutcliffe. I'm a senior commercial marketing manager, and I also do on-day wedding and events coordination. I'm from Region 4, okay? Been Region 4 all my life, okay? And I come from a very big family. And many of us in our family call us the Sutcliffe tribe. My dad is Peter Sutcliffe, who currently pastors Nietzsche's Outreach Centre, and Sharon Sutcliffe, who is now in heaven. And of course, with a big family, you get your in-laws and you get all the babies. And so I feel like I'm the best auntie, you know, but no, I love my nieces and nephews. They keep me on my toes for sure. Christmas means I do my Christmas shopping from September, okay, because there's a lot. But it's definitely an honor to be on here and share some sentiments from my perspective. Thank you.
Oh, hi. So I'm Joe Aldred. I have been in England now, I think 55 or 6 years. I was born in Jamaica, of course, and have grown up here. The Church of God of Prophecy has been a lifelong belonging for me from Jamaica and here. I'm married to Novelette, and we have 3 beautiful women who are daughters to us and 5 grandchildren. My own perspective tend to come from a number of places. They come from being brought up in the Church of God of Prophecy as a Pentecostal church, so I have a sort of Pentecostal understanding of the world. They also come through academic studies, which I've done to PhD level at Sheffield University in contextual Black theology. And they also come from the last maybe 20 years of working, maybe more than that, 25 years of working in the field of ecumenical affairs, which means I've, trying to work with several different denominations of churches, encouraging them to view each other as fellow members of the body of Christ and to find ways of being in mission together. One of my passions over the last 20, 30 years has been about publishing literature, books, and my last book, which I get a chance to talk to you about at the end for a few minutes. My last book, Flourishing in Babylon, Black British Agency and Self-Determination, is my 10th publication, some of which have been anthologies where I get other people to write. But this is a call really for largely what we're talking about tonight, about reclaiming narratives. It is about how we take hold of the way we live, how we live our lives, and how the story is told about our lives. And that's really what I try to achieve in this last book. I commend it to you, of course. Available on Amazon at knockdown price. But I think it's very important that we learn how to live in Babylon, how we take Jeremiah 29 seriously, not just the 11th verse, but the whole of it, where Jeremiah encourages us to find ways of flourishing where we are. That's largely what I bring to this discussion tonight.
Thank you all very much indeed. Thank you, Joe, and to the other panelists. And I'm really looking forward to the discussion we're going to have a little bit later on. But by way of giving some context to tonight's theme and tonight's programme, we're going to celebrate two giants from the Windrush era by allowing them to share a little bit of their story. So we're going to be watching a couple of video clips, just short ones. The first one is produced by the Gospel Revisited project, headed up by Ray Prince, alongside their creative partners, Gospel Link 360, CIC. They interviewed key people who were there when the foundations for the explosion of musicians and singers who impacted the UK and world pop music culture were being formed. One such individual was Daphne McCullough. Daphne is one of Church of God of Prophecy's remarkable seniors. I'm sure those who know her will agree with me. In this short video clip, we see Daphne talking about her life in Jamaica and then her move and experience of life in the UK in the early 1960s. An essential part of life for her was her Christian faith. Let's now watch that clip from the video Windrush Influence on Gospel Recounted.
You must be. It was so strange, my friend. When I came here and I went down to the shop, I came back and said the shop closed. Because if the doors were closed, you have to open to go in. And we never used to that home. So when I got back home, I says to my husband, they don't open the shop yet. So he said, you've got to push the door. So I had to go back to do what he says. And that was very hard for me at the time. And I don't know if I should say this, but most of my letters that are sent back home, I put them in the litter box. Litter, not letter. If you follow me. Yeah. Because I thought it marked letterbox, not knowing what letterbox meant then. And so a few of my letters went in that box. So I had to rewrite them and get the knowledge to know that liter is different from letter. And those were sort of a bit of obstacle to me at the beginning when I just came. It was a bit of obstacle because I never used to that. But obviously, I could pick up things very quickly. So I get adopted to all those, what I was not used to. So that was part of my coming here.
So how did you find settling in with a new community of people?
It was hard.
Yeah.
It was hard.
Can you share any experiences of...
On the buses, when I came here, I went straight into work at Alam Hospital. My job was ready because of a friend I've got there. And it was audacious. The people, they look at you like you are inferior, and they don't really talk to you and such like. So it was a bit confusing to me. And at least I'm seeing more white faces than my color, and then I feel sort of abstract because they are not saying anything to me, and they would sort of say sometimes, "You black," and all like that. So it was not an easy time for me at the time. But obviously, I started to work at the hospital, and I worked with some white people, and then the manager of that hospital got to love me as a white woman because she was a Christian. And I came here as one. So she get in touch with me and begin to love me and talk with me. And she always says to me, while I was doing my job, says, "Oh, Daphne, if Olive can do it, you can do it." And so she was an inspiration to me. And they...
Thank you very much indeed for that. As you can see, the challenges that our foreparents had to experience when they first came to this country. I really would encourage you to watch the full video. It's a 45-minute video. We've just taken a little fragment of it. But if you go to the Gospel Revisited project page, you'll find Daphne's video along with others recounting their experiences. We're now going to turn to another video clip with Guy Bailey telling his story. And Guy was the man who was turned away from a job interview by the Bristol Omnibus Company due to the colour of his skin. This incident led to the Bristol bus boycott in the 1960s. And this video gives a little insight into Guy's experience.
Well, we don't want them on there, that's the main reason. There ain't going to be enough work for the whites, let alone the blacks.
We intend to go on engaging white labour rather than coloured labour.
They didn't know that I was black, but it's on my arrival things changed and I become a black person, not a person. At the time, every day there was adverts in the paper for bus drivers and conductors. In Jamaica, I had never seen a double-decker bus. And when I saw the double-decker buses over here, I thought, oh, I would love to be able to drive one of those.
What you want, Mr. Green, is to restrict the numbers of coloured people who come and get jobs in the transport department as drivers and conductors.
Well, that's what I'm instructed to do by my bench.
A local West Indian association felt it had to take action.
You could arrange an interview by telephone, which I did with the help of our spokesperson, Paul Stevenson.
The surprising thing was that the secretary was so shocked when I arrived, and it was a black person.
I could hear her saying, "Mr. Bailey's here, but he's a black. He's black, he's a black man." And I could hear also that the person in the other rooms saying, "Tell him that the vacancy is filled." And this was only an hour after I had confirmed that I was going to have an interview.
The following day, we went to the manager's office, and the manager told us, under no circumstances he's going to employ black people.
I was working out how best to bring this to the notice of the public. And it's then I'm thinking of Luther King and his bus boycott. And I decided, yes, I'll ask the people in the city to boycott Bristol's buses.
There were good support with hundreds of university students that were supporting the boycott was sitting in the road and lying across in front of the buses.
The controversy is now in its second week, and the policy of the bus company that started it all still applies.
Once you change this job over and it becomes known as a coloured man's job, well, then the white man does not take any further interest in it.
The campaign gained national support from, among others, Sir Leary Constantine, Harold Wilson and Tony Benn.
What about the West Indies cricketers here? Do you think they're having any trouble?
Well, they're not. But surely they can't be very happy playing, knowing that their countrymen are discriminated against 50 yards from the playing field.
Mr. Paul Stevenson, you've now read the agreed statement between the company and the unions. What are your views on it?
Oh, of course, we're very pleased indeed.
I was asked if I wanted to be interviewed for a job, but I refused because I was scared to be beaten up. I thought I was safer doing something else.
You may have noticed in the title that Guy has an OBE. He was awarded that OBE. Not only that, he was made very recently an honorary doctorate from the University of West of England for his part in the UK civil rights movement and the British bus boycott. So although Guy and others like him experienced a lot of discrimination and maybe a lot of fear in those times, those were acknowledged in some way or in part by establishments today. So tonight's panel comprises of individuals who in their own right are all very successful and who come with a wealth of knowledge and lived experiences that I believe will allow us to have an inspiring and an enriching discussion this evening. And I hope that we can get all of the panelists up right now. Thank you. Welcome all again. You introduced yourselves a little bit earlier. And we'll just, if you like, go through a series of questions from me, I suppose, that can at least help us to get a bit better understanding of the issue in discussion this evening, reclaiming and changing the narrative. But let's start by going back a little bit. So, Polly and Joe, how has the Windrush story impacted your life? And what lessons have you learned from your parents and grandparents who first-hand experienced it?
Joe?
I'd like to be a gentleman and let the lady go first, if I may.
Well, I was going to, can I reciprocate that to you?
All right, no problem. So the Windrush is my life. I don't like being associated with a ship, to be honest. I don't want to be identified by the Windrush, a German troop ship that the British then took over. And then when the scandal arose in 2018, it then became famous that, we are the Windrush generation, even though many, many other ships sailed and brought people here. Anyway, that's enough of that. But but the period that we're talking about, after the Second World War, 1940s, 50s onwards, I came to England in 1968. My father came to England in 1955, left me in Jamaica. I was born in 1952, so I never met my father again until I was nearly 16. They had to get me to England before I was 16. Otherwise, I couldn't come as a minor. And then I met him. He had come back to Jamaica, I think, for a couple of months, but I don't recall that at all. So that period and the life of people mixed up in it is very profound in my own life experience. If it wasn't that my father came to England, I wouldn't be here. the reason my father came to England is not, as some people like to say, because the British government invited us to come and rebuild the country, which is a load of rubbish. Actually, nothing never goes so. If you read the records and listen to the historians, what they will tell you is that the government, a Labour government at the time, in 1948, did all in their power to turn the ship back and to divert it away, not to have it land. So it's nonsense. My father came here because he was having difficulty looking after his family, finding work that paid as a rural Jamaican. Why was he in Jamaica? The reason he was in Jamaica is because a few hundred years before that, British ships sailed my ancestors across the Atlantic. Many of them died, and the others lived on cane fields and worked till they died. Some of them died very young, and so on. So the whole Windrush story began before Windrush, but how it has impacted me is profoundly, good and bad. If I may just close, I mean, I've been back to Jamaica several times. I have seen close up some of the youngsters that I was 15 with when I left. And some of them who emigrated, mostly to Canada or America, some here to Britain. Some mostly have fared well. Some of those who stayed, though, when I look at the situation, people that were brighter than I was when we were at school in Portman School, and see how difficult it has been for them. It's a blessing and a curse. It's a bittersweet experience. Had I stayed there, what might have happened to me? That's what I would say. It profoundly affected my life. I could tell you tales about how I got here and went to Bourneville College. They had no idea what to do with us coming from the Caribbean as youngsters. Our education were undermined. I got in the end a PhD when I was in my 50s, not earlier on because of that. But had I stayed in Jamaica, would life have been better for me? I think only if I had found a way of scaling the ladder of Jamaican society, or if I had migrated somewhere else.
Fantastic. Thanks, Joe. As for me, I came here when I was 11 years of age. And unlike Joe, I cannot identify too much. As my husband would say, can I just say it like I always said? He said, "You're not Jamaican, you're English." Basically, because I cannot identify with Jamaica. I know, as I do here. And that's basically the fact, because I came here so young. In relation to the Windrush, I can't even identify with that. It's not until my latter years that I began to understand all about the Windrush. Now, I came here, when I came, I was very, very fortunate to have gotten into a reputable school, one of which I had to take an entrance exam. And I got into the school. And when I got into the school, I don't like to use the word stand out like a sore thumb, but I'd like to say I was kind of distinguished. Oh my goodness, distinguished, because I was
That
not
sounds better.
distinguished, not yet. I was the only black student in the entire school, and I became. I was a person that everybody wanted to run. They wanted to see, they wanted to see, let me see, are you really black? And all this kind of a thing. Is your blood black? And basically, it was not because they were rude. It's just the fact they were really genuinely inquisitive. Because I remember one girl said to me, if you cut your skin, what color would be your blood? And I said to her, same as yours. The only thing that makes the difference between you and me is a pigment, the color of our skin. And I have to say, I did not experience any cultural differences, nor did I expect experience any form of prejudice whilst I was school. In fact, I got through school, plus other further education and so forth. But one of the things that impacted me, and it will impact me until it will go to my grave. My father came in 1954, I believe it was. Mom came in 55, and I came, I think, either 56 or 57. So now you can work my age out. Look at you trying to count and work my age out. But that's all right. And I remember it in
You still
those
look
days.
young.
Thank you, thank you. I don't know what Joy is laughing at. Anyway, one of the things that really impacted me, and sometimes when I think about it, and I think of my own children now and my own grandchildren, how fortunate they are. In those days, and maybe probably Joe can probably tell you that we didn't have central heating in those days. We had to wake up to paraffin heater and all that. So I remember it well. And I remember mom could not afford, because she had to spend a lot of money for my school uniform. And I remember she had to wear 3 cardigans to work, and what we call vests, they call them marinas, the older generation call them marinas. And she had to wear about 2 of those, the thermal ones, and about 3 cardigans and a coat, just to keep her body warm, so she could sacrifice to get my uniform. I remember that vividly. I remember it until this day. And I go back into my own children. Oh, I could just walk into Marks and Spencer and buy them their coat, and John Lewis is a supply of my daughter's uniform, and so on. So life was very hard financially in those days, but it got better and better. I also remember mom used to go shopping, and I used to meet her after school on a Friday. And 1 and 6, which is the equivalent of about 12 and a half pence, did the week shopping. Monica, only your mother could either did the week shopping, believe it.
We wish that would
And
happen
we had
now.
to take a taxi. Sorry? Yeah,
I said
we
we
had to
wish that
take a
could happen
taxi home because
now.
we couldn't take all this shopping. Now, you can't even get, not even a loaf of bread for 12 and a half pence. But how history has changed for the better. Growing up in the church also is an experience, because in those days I was the only Sunday school scholar, and you can go into history and you'll find this out. I was the only Sunday school scholar in the entire country of England that you'd find at that time. And then I could go on and talk about the church and how we bought churches and so on, but I can just leave that till a little while from now. But yes, so the Windrush has really impacted me now at the later stage of life, especially watching the video of Guy, and
Bailey.
that really had a lasting impression. I actually saw the documentary a few months back, and that really impacted on me to see how we as black people were treated. Not only, but if we were invited to come over here to drive the buses, to be nurses and doctors and what have you. And most people, my parents were only coming for 5 years. And as soon as they made their millions, they would have gone back to Jamaica. Well, they were here for 50, 60 odd years, and they're buried here. And the list goes on and on and on. But having said that, I am happy that I came. And I'm happy now at my stage of life. I am very happy, and God is good, and God is loving and kind, and I've got a good life. I've got a good husband. Don't tell him I said that, Joe. I've got a good husband, and wonderful. And I've got, God has blessed us with 2 lovely children, and we've got 4 grandchildren. The 2 older grands, the eldest girl, she'll be 21 months after, and she's in her final year at university. The second girl is in her second year, and the two younger ones are in year 8 and 7, respectively. So yes, God is good.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I think hearing your experiences, I'm wondering now for our 2 younger panel members, what lessons do you believe today's generation can learn from the Windrush generation in terms of their resilience? If you listened to Daphne's account of what she had to go through when she first came here, going to a shop door and turning back because she thought it was, closed, because that wasn't what she was used to. So their resilience, their community building, and this sense of social justice that we saw through Guy and those others in that documentary. If you could comment on that, Jasmine and Anne-Marie.
Yeah, so
If
I
Jasmine could
think
go
today's
first, yes.
generation can definitely learn from the resilience of the Windrush generation. I think if we look back and we kind of take out nuggets of what that generation went through and what they had to, I don't want to say suffer through, but what they had to go through to get to where we are now so that we can stand here and we can be stood in our truth and in our power. It is commendable that they stood strong in the face of adversity when they're coming to a country where people don't really want them there and are openly showing that to them. For us to now, if we come against challenges, we know that we can make it through any sort of situation because our forefathers went through that and went through something that is exponentially bigger than some of the challenges that we may go through now. And even looking at like the video of the Bristol bus boycott, we know that change does come if we unite and we stand together and we make a decision that no, we're not happy with what's going on now. We need to make a change. We have seen from that generation that things can change if we are united, if we do come together, and especially touching on that camaraderie in the community sense. That's something that we hear all the time. It takes a village, and I think that definitely comes from that generation, that we have learned that if you can't do it by yourself, you have people around you that you can go to and they will lift you up and they will get you through that situation. So I think there's a lot of things that we can learn from that generation and things that we are still trying to kind of ingrain in ourselves, and kind of we are the product of that generation, so that will always be in us. Those life lessons will always flow through our DNA. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Yeah, I think to just piggyback off of that as well, it's definitely like what was mentioned, the resilience in the face of adversity. It's leaving everything you know behind to go to somewhere that is completely different culturally. Weather is not great, and then you're hoping to create something better, do something more, and then it's literally like you know you're going to be faced with challenges. And I don't believe that people would have understood the types of challenges that they would have possibly encountered whilst on their way, because when you're making a journey, when you're on a destination, you're not thinking of the worst things that can happen. When you've got something in sight, a goal, you focus on that goal, and sometimes it's all the other stuff doesn't matter. You don't think about that until you're in that situation and you're like, whoa, I didn't realize this was gonna pan out like this. I didn't realize I was going to be experiencing this. And then it can take a lot. It's that resilience piece. It's that reception. When you came, have people been welcoming? Well, no, they haven't. Even when it comes to like housing conditions and limited employment opportunities that was mentioned, and even being offered something but turning it down because you don't want to experience more negative situations on top of an awkward situation that you're really trying to do your best with, because you probably know that if you go back, it's going to be a lot more hassle to do that than to just stay and just do your best and just kind of like ride it out. And literally, despite everything, like we have got friends right, that they'll be in employment and they know they're not being seen, they're not being heard, they're not being appreciated in the role that they're doing. They go above and beyond and they are scared to leave their jobs. But yet this particular generation left everything they knew for something better. And it kind of puts things into perspective a little bit, because why are we sometimes so afraid to take a calculated risk? Yes, there will be adversities. Yes, there will be challenges. That's normal. That's life. It's a part of growth. But the little things that I think my generation, I think I'm a Gen Z, I'm not too sure, but between Gen Z and Millennium, I have no idea, I can't keep up. But between those, it's just, it kind of, when you really think about it, the little things that we're afraid to move in and move out of, when you put it into perspective, it's like, where is your fearlessness? Where's that gone? do we still have that tenacity, or have we become so complacent and so comfortable that we don't need to work as hard, but we know we do, because we know that the same systematic things that happen, experiences that are negative because of skin color, because of culture, they still exist.
Yes.
So that's the resilience piece. And I think that another thing that's quite important is the community, and this was touched upon as well, the community in self-help, like things like building each other up. Now, you came in with a certain amount of people, and that's your community, so you're going to look out for each other, because essentially that's your family. You're going to look out for each other. And then the way how they were innovative, like for example, I don't know if we could call it microfinancing, but that whole partner situation, which still goes on.
Yes.
It's a way to save money that help build finances. And so you use what you have. It's okay. You may not have a lot to start with. That's okay. But you can build on that. Look around at the resources that you have. Be creative. Figure something out, because you've got to. you can't be looking backwards. Like, figure it. Like, you've got to be creative and innovative. And the way how people were able to save money and people were supporting and building that community piece, it changes everything when you have people around you that are rooting for you, that are in the same situation. We're experiencing the same thing. So that also helps, and that's important. And then I think entrepreneurship and cultural preservation is important as well, because years after, you have restaurants, barbershops were notorious for information and everybody finding out new things, understanding who's got married, what's going on. Like, there was a lot. And so you had like barbershops, restaurants, and loads of different businesses like that people would get employed. So you creating those opportunities with your entrepreneurship. That's important as well, because you're able, and even as well as independent churches that were started. I'm very sure Kogot was one. But we literally, like, that was able to get started. And I think it's important when you it doesn't matter how much you start with. And it's easy for me to say, because I understand that my generation, we're coming from a place of privilege, a lot of privilege. Half of the things that our parents, our grandparents, our great grandparents have experienced, we will probably never experience that to that capacity. It will never be the same. Although there are different things that we're having to work through, but it's in comparison. I love the fearlessness, the creativeness, and the resilience that has allowed us to continue to hold on. This is from that instance of the Windrush. That's where it started from, when they came to England. And look at what has happened. Look at what has been built. Look at how we've grown together. And look at how rich and diverse the Caribbean culture is, like, generally. And so, I think the preservation of the Caribbean culture is important as well, and not losing ourselves in a new society, in a new place. It's important to know and keep your identity. We can work in different environments, no matter what that looks like, but don't lose yourself in the process. Your heritage, your culture, hold on to that. Because who's going to teach your children, my nieces and nephews? Like, I want to be able to give something back so that they don't lose that. You can be British, and there are other things that you can pick up and learn along the way, but just making sure that you're holding on to certain values and cultural values that are important to you, so it doesn't get lost. So that when they actually start traveling, like, you know who you are. You know what kinds of foods that you like and whatnot. Like, you're educated in that manner. And I think it's important not to forget that. But so that's my little 2 pence. Yeah.
Well, that was a big 2 pence. Thank you.
I know.
Hey, girl, excellent. Because the passion comes across, and I think before I move this on a little bit, is that tenacity is something that's a golden thread, particularly, no disrespect to any other culture, through the Black populace. And it goes way beyond, as Joe was saying, in terms of the Windrush is just a moment in time. If you take it even further back, A lot of our ancestors have lived through so many things that have created the opportunities for the next generation. And so I think that we mustn't forget in today, 2024, we have to continue to build a platform for our youngsters who have a future.
Yes.
As we mentioned, it's not just
Yes.
about the past. It's what is it that we're building, and what we can learn, those building blocks about resilience, community networking, and having a voice that's heard. You can't do it
Yeah.
solo. We've got to do it collectively. But let me just turn a little bit to Joe at this point, and others can chip in if you feel you need to. What do you think were the main push and pull factors that motivated the Windrush generation, or those people at that time, to migrate? And how did they reconcile the realities they faced when they came to post-war Britain versus the idealistic view of it being a country that was paved, the streets were paved with gold?
Sociologists and other people write about this a lot, and there is much writing out there already, part of what we need to reclaim, because some of them speak through the lens of white authors who had no idea of the experience of the Black people they were working with. But we hear things like the 5-year syndrome. People came for 5 years, and then 55, 65, they're still here. Some have died and never gone back. But the reason for the 5-year syndrome, and by the way, some people did achieve the aim of just coming for 5 years. I know people who did and went back and bought a property in Kingston, for example. But the vast majority of people never realized that 5-year aim of earn money, return, because, of course, they found out when they were here, like my dad, for example, who was part of that 5-year syndrome. When he came back in after 5 years in 1960, and I'm told, discovered the little money he had just ran out very quickly. So he was back again to come back, and then brought us here. So economic needs is a major both push and pull factor, because it was pushing people. If you're my dad, who had 11 children in the end, I'm number 8, and even before the number got to 11, the job of looking after them, of providing for them, was very hard. If you live, particularly where we lived, in deep rural St. Catherine, Jamaica. And so I'm told, for example, that he borrowed the money for the fare, for the ship fare to come to sail to England in 1955. I had to repay it. So the economic situation back there, because Jamaica, don't forget, where I've come from, as much of the Caribbean, Jamaica was a slave colony, first by the Spanish and then by the British. And for hundreds of years, both countries bled Jamaica, the rest of the Caribbean, under colonialism, much of Africa, of resources, and then tie those countries up in trade deals that made them dependent forever and ever. Amen. Right. So the pull factor from Britain was, of course, that it was after the war, and Britain needed to be rebuilt. It had lots of jobs. What they found when they came here was that they became the bottom class, because the white people who used to do menial tasks move up, and we kind of slotted in at the bottom. By we, I mean most of the people from the Caribbean came from Jamaica, and most of the Jamaicans who came were very much working people. I know there are stories about us being very, very highly skilled. I can tell you, my father was not very, very highly skilled. He could just about scratch his name, and so my mom. And that's not everybody's story, but that's a lot of people's story. And they were having difficulty in that former slave colony, starved of resources, difficult to develop, and that Britain, the so-called mother country, had jobs. And then when they came, of course, they found some of those jobs didn't want them, and they gravitated nearly always to the lowest forms. You've heard some stories already about people, they're at the job center, and the job center rings up and they say, yes, there is a job, and sends the person there. When they go there, they see that it's a black person, and the sign changes, it turns over, right? No vacancy. And so on. So, those are some of the challenges. And I think that was a primary challenge for right across the Caribbean why people migrated. It was economic. It wasn't for love of mother country. It wasn't out of their coming to rebuild nothing, right? They were coming to earn money. People went not only here. Some went to build the Suez Canal. Some went to Canada. Some went to America. And some came here. So I think that's, what were some of the experiences? I've touched on some of them already. I experienced them myself as a youngster. I came in 1968, and that was the year of Enoch Powell's Rivers of Blood speech. But if you listen keenly to the story being told about the bus boycott in Bristol in 1963, you hear much of the same language as would be imputed to the Rivers of Blood speech. People are coming here to take our jobs. You still hear it today about people who come over here on the boats, for example, illegal immigrants. So I think two last things before I stop. I think the church, the Black Pentecostal church, has been a godsend. Because when I came as a 15-year-old, nearly 16, I remember a white boy, two of them stole my father's bike that I was riding and just rode off with it. And there was like nothing you can do. They're just gone, and you have to just take it, I remember walking years later, and a couple of white guys in a car stuck their hand out the window with a banana in it and said, have you lost this, mate? I remember being down in Kent mowing our front garden when I was sent down there as a pastor in 1983, and a group of people just passing by and, freely shouting all the kind of abusive racial slurs that you can imagine. What we have now, though, are laws that can't prevent it, but they can hold people to account. But in the midst of all that hostility, and when I went to Bourneville College, and it was clear the teachers, when they found I could play cricket pretty well, I started playing for the staff, and I was treated quite well then. But the teachers made you know that they didn't think much of you in academic or intellectual sense. When you went to church on Sunday, and the prayer meetings in the week and Bible study, all the actors looked like me. The pastor he had, better quality hair, right? But the pastor looked like me. The choir leader looked like me. The musicians looked like me. I was one of them. The singers looked like me. And there was a sense of affirmation that I think our type of churches brought to people like me. And to this day, although I don't do much for my own denomination, really, generally, because my work is more ecumenical, but today I am still very, very grateful that I could have been blown away, washed away by the tides of life, but that affirming church space that made you know that God loves you, you're made in God's image, and you are as good as, better than most of those who may be looking sort of down on you. So I think that, as I said, the push-pull factors were nearly all economic. My sister came here to train as a nurse, for example, and then as soon as she trained for a few years, she went to live in America and got a swimming pool. You couldn't get that here in England as a nurse. So I think, I said the church has been important, but the push-pull factors are very, very real. They were economic, and I think we should give our foreparents and our parents credit for being so brave as to take a step into the unknown, rather than keep saying we are here because they invited us. If a lion write you a letter and say, come to my den, you don't go. Right? And coming to his den was like coming into a lion's den. These were the people who for 300 years enslaved us. This is the country that did that. Why would we come here and think it's going to be a lovey-dovey, going to be a love-in? Why? It's, well, because probably we didn't do our research. People were keen to get work, and because they weren't coming here to stay.
The plan was to go back.
Stop there.
As you started down that road of speaking about the influence that the church played, let me just turn to that. So, Adele, what role do you believe the Black churches played in changing the narrative for the Black community in Britain, and how can they continue to influence positive change today?
One of the words that jumped out at me in relation to what Joe just said, there's a word called resilience. And I think it's a very good, and it's a rather, in my view, a provocative word. Because if our ancestors were not resilient in the church world, we would not be on this platform tonight. We had to fight for where we're at today. And I don't know many of you, I mean, maybe Joe could identify with me that when our parents first came here, they were not wanted in the white churches. You know, they would, if you walk into a church, they said, oh, there's a, you know, you can go down the road, don't come back next Sunday, and so on. So our Black folks, Christian folk, they had to rise from there where we're at and say, well, no, this is not good. We're not going to sit down and take it. So they had to step out into the unknown. And one of the things that rather intrigues me, the very people who were turning us away from their buildings are the very people who are sending off their buildings to us. You know, so it's kind of a cycle, really. But we have played a very prominent role in the fact that we would not sit down knowing that we have God on our side, and people just went out. It was like a congruence. It was like a strong determination that, look, we're going to rise up, we're going to do this. And so they started up with prayer meetings in their homes. And we used to call it, now it's called cell group, but in those days it was just a prayer meeting, 2, 3, 4 people. And out of that prayer meeting, many churches were born until this day. So we're very, very grateful for our parents, our church ancestors' resilience and their determination, their resolution. And it was not just for them, it was for the future generation, because so many buildings that there are today, we can walk into building. I walk into the House of Bread. I'm so proud. I'm so proud. I'm very passionate about that building. Don't touch that building. You hear me? Don't touch that building. I know how that building was bought. Hello. Yes, Rachel. At the time, I was a church clerk. And when my late mom, the only 2 people on this platform would know is actually Joe and Monica, would remember Sister Rodney. You're always determined in getting a place of our own. We used to worship. Joe, do you remember Longfield Hall? Do you remember Longfield Hall in Natural Road? Right. We used to worship in that hall. We couldn't even say hallelujah too tough. The caretaker had an adjacent door, and if we were singing too loudly, he would come in the middle of service. Holy Ghost, come back next week and ring the bell, and told us to be quiet. And we can't have that. And one sister was walking and saw the then Kitty Road building up for sale and told mom about it. And I said, yeah, we're going to get on it. And I remember writing the letter to Scotland Yard to get the permission to do house to house and street collection. And I remember Sister Henry, for one, all 3 times a day, they would have to go and empty their tins. Dog would bark at them. But on account of their determination to get their own place of worship, look what God has done. We've got that building. In fact, I think Kitty Road may be larger than, excuse me, Wembley. And since then, we erected a baptismal pool. Somebody had the vision that because of my late mom's, not just her labor, but the initiator, had the whole refurbished, and it's now called the VP Rodney Suite. So yes, they did a lot of us in terms that we can be comfortable, walk into our own buildings under no restrictions to say, get out, come back next week. And so there we have it.
And the bell was one, turning off the lights
keys
was another, shaking keys. But if you look at the journey of a lot of our Black-led churches, from somebody's living room right the way through to having their own building and having a lot of those buildings paid for, the mortgages paid off. And this was done with them, the members. You talked earlier, Anne-Marie, about the risk takers. They'd remortgage their properties, take out loans to ensure that there was a safe space for worship. That's commendable. It really is. So Jasmine, if I can turn to you on that same question, but looking, into the future, how then can the church now be sort of change agents for a positive tomorrow, today and tomorrow for our younger believers, if you like, or younger Black British people?
I think kind of touching on what we kind of originally touched on in terms of the resilience and standing firm in all situations, I think that is something that if we continue to have those qualities and those values, and our younger people see that in us and see that in the older generation, that is things that will naturally pass on to them, and that will then carry them through for the rest of their lives. For myself personally, I only have one grandmother left. One of my grandfathers was Elder A.A. Burke, which a lot of people may know that name. A lot of people know who
I'll
he
talk about it
is
in
and
a
what
little
he
while.
did. And when people see me, they see him. So there is always kind of that form of a legacy from that generation that does get passed down throughout children, throughout grandchildren. There is a legacy there that is passed on that we then need to look at ourselves and think, are we living up to that legacy? Like Anne-Marie said before, do we have that tenacity? Do we have those values that were instilled in our grandparents, in our parents, and sort of in the generation now? Because there's still people that have been through that and are with us now, as evidence on this platform. But it's looking at kind of the future and what do we want to see in that future? How are we instilling those values in ourselves so that it then passes on to that next generation? So yeah, that's my thoughts on that topic.
Brilliant. I'm glad you spoke about your grandfather or your grandparent, one of them, the legend that is Aston A. Burke.
Legend, yes.
Know him well. He's the kind of person that you would just want to sit at his feet, a bit like Paul and Gamaliel, really just to learn from him. A very educated man and a knowledgeable man in the word. But and thank you for responding in that way. I think I caught you on the hop there a little bit. But if I were to go to you, Anne-Marie and Joe, if we were talking about what the next steps were in ensuring that the narrative continues to evolve positively for Black Britons over the coming decades, what would your response be?
So my response would be, and it's something that I know that we are working on as a community. I think since the whole George Floyd situation, it's almost like it's ignited a lot of people to kind of wake up and realize, hold on a second, we need to do more. We need to support each other more. We've got dreams and visions that we have been birthed with, that we've been sitting on. And it's a thing where sometimes it takes a horrible situation, right, to kind of wake you up and shake you up. And sometimes it's needed, because from that situation, it's almost like that was a ripple that started everybody thinking, hold on a second, something else needs to happen. Where's my community? Where's my tribe? Where are my people? Where can I support you? How can I give you money? How can we exchange? How can we build this community? How can we do more that we're supporting each other? Because at the end of the day, when you go in this big wide world, you've got your friends and your family, and it's just like, well, sometimes some people feel alone. We shouldn't be in a situation where we're feeling lonely. We shouldn't be in a situation, because the experience is not a unique experience to one person. It's it's to all of us in this lived experience. It's a shared experience. And so it's important to remember that, okay, not everybody has it all together. That's okay. That's fine. Start with where you are. It goes back to my point, and I don't want to go on a tangent, but as a community, we're not in this by ourselves. The experiences that we have, it's important to share your stories, to talk about it, because, and I think we may touch on this, but it's literally, okay, I'm going through this. What, have you ever been through this? Talking to other people, because you know what, you might find that somebody's already been through that 2 years ago, and this is how they dealt with it. This is how I built my resilience. This is how I got through this situation. These are the legal steps that you need to take if this is what's going on in the workplace and you're too scared to mention it. Like, it's important to don't shy away and think, oh, it must just be me. It must just be this company. It must just be this set of friends. No, it's a lot of the time we're not going through stuff by ourselves. So it's important that we do that community kind of uplifting and make sure we focus on that, and just make sure that we're building each other up, talk a little bit more. But I think from a political kind of educational perspective, I think it's important to, if not already, introduce or build on some kind of anti-racism framework within the UK and the educational system, for teachers to understand, and for managers to understand, and for politicians to understand, okay, these things are unacceptable. And we know that we've got the Black equity movement that's happening, but building on that as well, it's just bringing that to our awareness, talking about it more, so we're aware of these different platforms that are being used to pose a more positive kind of, like, if you are in doubt, you can reach out to them. They're put in places to make sure that we're okay, to make sure that the playing field is starting to get leveled out a little bit more than it is. A lot has happened that's positive, but I do think the educational system, and even with career guidance, introducing, just different kinds of ways to develop that. What does it look like for people in different areas? Because one school will teach you how to be a manager, another school will teach you how to be a worker. Find out where those gaps are. But it's also important to instill that in the younger generation, like, you can think bigger. You can think bigger. Yeah. It's okay. You can think bigger. Your parents have done everything that they can within their remit, within their education, within their finances, within their resources. Now, you've got all of that and all of your potential to work to. So it's kind of like, okay, you've got this basis, you've got a lot more land that you can take, you've got a lot more that you can, a lot more awareness that you can bring, you've got so much more to bring to the world, regardless. So it's kind of like, yeah, from a systematical perspective, just in the educational system, and I think in the workplace specifically, when we're talking about discrimination, when we're talking about microaggressions, when we're talking about equality and everything else that comes with it, it's important that a company doesn't just do it for a tick box. And this is where other kind of political establishments, we kind of need a few more things to happen, just to make sure, like, for example, if HR weren't allowed to have the first name and surname before they give in a CV, to remove any kind of identity, but you're just looking at the skill set and experience, that's one way to do it. A lot of people may not want to do it that way, but sometimes it takes something drastic to change something. So I'm just like, there are different ideas that can be cultivated and worked on, and it's just a matter of continuing to progress forward in making sure that the pay gaps, because we know we have gender pay gaps as well, and there's a lot of different situations that may happen, and just making sure that we're able to iron them out, but just making sure there is some kind of discrimination, anti-racism policy within the workplace. If there isn't, it's a case of asking the question, hey, is this something you want to, if you're brave enough to, I'm not saying run to HR and be like, listen, I was on YouTube listening to this. I'm not saying, I'm just saying there are different ways that you can approach situations. If you know that something's missing that may help them, and it may help them move forward by having a diverse workforce, it might be something for a
Right.
small to medium company to consider. So there are different ways. And then also providing targeted support for Black entrepreneurs, and just kind of like overcoming issues with like accessing funding and things like that. We know that that's sometimes a little bit challenging, but just making sure things are put in place, which they are. I went to a seminar the other day, which was based in Birmingham, and it was at the Legacy Centre of Excellence. And they put on there was a free seminar and then a seminar that you paid for, but they went over different funding techniques and the rest of it. And that's important, because as an entrepreneur, you're looking for ways to grow your business. If you're not looking to grow, what are you wasting your time doing? You need to have that growth strategy, and you need to have that mindset of bigger, think bigger. It's okay to start small. That's fine. Start where you are. However, have that growth strategy. So just making sure that you are that we continue to provide spaces where we are providing that kind of information to help along entrepreneurs' journeys of what they want to do, because they want to be bigger than what they are. And that's how it
Yeah.
should be. You should want more for yourself and your family. Okay. So
Yes.
then another
Yeah.
thing that I had was when it comes to policing. Now, I know that COGOP have done a few things with the West Midlands Police, and they've had a few leadership meetings, and then to just talk with them and kind of bridging that gap. That is important because there's a lot of stigma, negative stigma, which we know there are still things happening within the police force. And you've got amazing people in the police force. It's just a few situations that are happening that it's a bit questionable, because it's difficult to understand. Well, hold on. The facts are there. What's happening here? Like, I'm trying to understand. So it's just making sure that we're bridging those gaps within the community, bridging them. No one's the enemy here. Let's not be ignorant and be like, no, they're not supposed. No. Let's not do that. Let's work together at the end of the day, doing what we can within the positions that we're in, and do what we can to push forward a more positive agenda when it comes to building our societies, our communities, and the trust and understanding, like, who's the head of the area that's policing, building those friendships, those professional kind of communication, just building on that. And I think that's it. I think that's it from me. It's just continuing to build on that community empowerment, continuing to have these conversations, continuing to have meaningful conversations that actually people can build from. It's all good having a
Yeah.
conversation. I know that was nice, but if you don't act on it, if there's nothing else that's coming from it, what is the point? We can sit here and talk all day about how amazing we want these things to be, and even with a business or whatever the case may be with your career. If you're not researching, if you're not doing the qualifications or getting your certificates, if you're not upskilling yourself, the growth strategy you need to want that for yourself so you can build. And so by putting in these different things within career guidance, starting from universities, colleges and schools, mentorship, having more mentors. I can talk a lot, so I'm just saying those are a few of the things that came to mind when we're talking about
Well,
this, that we can definitely use and that we should definitely think about. And when we come off of this conversation in our local churches, in our communities, within our families, because I think families is another important one. It's all good speaking in groups in all these different pockets, but you have no idea what the mindset of your family members are. Don't forget to encourage your family, your sisters, your brothers, your cousins, your aunties, your uncles, all of them, because we all need encouragement. Start from within and it will work its way out.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anne-Marie, from the Anne-Marie show, from the Anne-Marie show, and as I say, I just love your passion and the ideas
Yes.
you're suggesting, because I
Yeah.
think that
Yeah.
there is the need for us to be the signposters. We can talk, but the
Yes.
action speaks louder than the words. I'm kind of just conscious of time, so there are a few more questions we want to go through. I do want to finish with Bishop Joe talking about his book, but if I can turn that question to you as well about, how can we positively ensure that narrative is changed for Black Britons?
So I want to foreground two things, really.
Yes.
One is personal and group agency, and the other agency and empowerment, and the other is the same, personal and group self-determination, having a sense of where you want to go in life, because in a very complicated, diverse world, it is easy to chase your tail around because there are so many things that need fixing that you could end up spending all of your time trying to chase one microaggression after another, chase one this after the other. I'm not saying that those things mustn't happen, but they mustn't happen at the expense of me having a sense of where I want to go.
Yes.
Where do I want to, what do I want out of life? Then in pursuing that goal, I deal with the things that get in the way, whether they're structural or personal. But if we're just going around fighting fires, then you end up not building anything. And that's one of the worries I have for this younger generation. Because I think there are some people actually whose job it is, who make money from, who live by doing those things, leading those, those megaphone public thing that go on with protests. And I've gotten close to some folks who are into this, much of this, agonizing and agitating, and we must have it right, and so on. And when you get close to them, you find that they are really struggling. The business that they're running, they're on the dole. They're on what's it, credit, because what they're doing is not sustainable. It's not because it's bad. It's just not sustainable. And I encourage young people. The world is so diverse, as I said. Get a sense of your own gravitational center and where it is you're trying to take your life and the contribution that you're trying to make. And I just want to flesh that out a little bit in the wider society. Black British is a hugely diverse, dynamic, complex idea, right? We can fight over BAME, and we say we don't want to be called BAME, we want to be called UKME and global majority. Fine, those things are all fine. You can write books about those and articles, make money from it. But where are you going with your life? What is it you want to achieve in life, right? Those things are on the side. They can help you maybe, but you've got to have a sense. And because it's so diverse, we're talking here within everybody now watch. In the old days, the good old days, everybody used to watch TV. Everybody knew what was going on in Coronation Street. You young guys won't know Coronation Street and Benny and whatever, right? But everybody used to know what's going on because the whole Crossroads, the whole country watched it. If there was a big thing, everybody watched it. Now everybody's watching their little podcast, right, with their 10 viewers, and everybody in their little groups. We're all segmented, and therefore, what I'm saying is, it is possible just not to achieve anything. When I look back on George Floyd, right, what happened with George Floyd? We tried to make him a saint after he was dead. Well, he wasn't a saint. He was a real man with challenges and with problems. But when that police had his knee on his neck, his other two police colleagues were people who would fit into the category of BAME. They were not white. They were minority ethnic. They stood there, and another person who was also BAME or global majority filmed it, right? And by virtue of their filming, the world heard about it. They did us all a favor. Where was the community to help George Floyd get that police knee off of his neck? right? We've become all voyeurs. You know, we just we watch. And if we're not careful, we watch our own lives. I would say within the church, we've got to begin, I think, to take seriously the heritage that you young people talk about. By the way, A. Burke was the first black Christian intellectual that I came across in our church. You know, you want to be in convention to hear him preach. Not because he's going to set the place on fire, but because his intellect was so clean
Yes,
and
very knowledgeable, very learned.
absolutely brilliant as a speaker. There was nobody to match him, right? But where are we going to take this church? You know, in our case, the Church of God of Prophecy, because again, black people belong to all the churches. I've told you I work ecumenically. Our church, the Church of God of Prophecy, some people think we're big. At our biggest, we registered about 5,500 members nationally at our biggest in terms of official membership. And it's come down since, although now we don't tend to disfellowship people, so the list just keep growing and growing and growing. But we've never registered 10,000 members in this country. So we're quite small. And so we have to decide in our small corner, how can we make this church appealing to those who are coming after us, those who are around us. Some of you younger people are not too keen to bring your friends to church, although you go, you suffer it, but you know, you don't necessarily bring your friends. And I can tell you that I've been a pastor, right? How are we going to make the church so that you can feel not intellectually compromised or spiritually compromised by bringing your friends with you to your church? Those are some tough questions that we have to ask. And I'm afraid we've been skimming the surface with some of them. But unless we begin to ask them, how do we make this place? We used to be able to draw people into the choir, right? You hardly get that anymore. So you have to have good, sort of almost intellectual, spiritual reasons why people will come to your church as opposed to the 200 other churches, which there are. And I would say only read my book, but we've got some work to do on that front.
Yes, so we certainly do. However, I think just to bring back that point about reclaiming and changing the narrative, that we are standing on the shoulders of giants in terms of some of the risks that they took, our foreparents took, and some of the advances that they made. And I think I'm keen to ensure that we don't miss that point about the fact that we are moving in the direction of wanting to ensure that the next generation coming afterwards have, if you like, the tools, they have the resilience, that sense of community that moves them into a place of wanting to say, yes, I'm here, and I'm going to get my voice heard, and I'm going to count. So on that note, to all of you, in what way do you consider the intergenerational dialogue contributing to changing the narrative? So that dialogue from those, and we know we're losing quite a lot of the older generation, but how is that going to shape the future? The younger generation, interacting with the older generation to ensure that we do have a future that is sustainable and impactful. That's to all of you. Let me start with you, Jasmine. We haven't heard you for a little while.
Oh no.
Oh yes.
Oh, my Wi-Fi is going. Sorry. No,
You're right.
For me, I think that intergenerational dialogue is so important, especially in the church realm, for the younger ones to hear what the older ones have been through, and also for the older ones to speak to the younger ones and see what sort of challenges they're actually facing now. Because the two challenges from the two different generations are slightly different. Young people are going through stuff that the older generation wouldn't have been through, and for the younger people to hear of some of the situations that the older generation went through, and for them to kind of pick bits where they think, oh, this is slightly similar, so how did you deal with this? And maybe I can use this when I'm going through whatever situation or circumstance I'm going through, there's that bridge that is made, because in a lot of the churches we see there's the older generation and then there's the youth, and there's not really anything in between. So there's not really anyone to kind of be that kind of middle person. So we need to have the balance of the older ones and the younger ones both sharing the stories and relating to each other, because then we find that the youth are just kind of sat off in a corner, and then you've got the older generation having the service, or it's the other way around, the youth are doing the service and the older generation don't have a clue what's going on, because they're bringing out songs that have just been released, especially in worship. It's a thing in my local church. We always try to have a balance of songs from the older generation and also newer songs, so that everyone can feel engaged, because we're all trying to move forward together. It's not, this is an older generational church or a new church. This should just be about people coming together, praising God and being who they are. So we need to start having those conversations, so we're not isolating the two generations and everyone is mingling, and things that were instilled in the older generation can be carried through, because like I said before, there is a legacy there, and those legacies do need to continue, because like you said, we are standing on shoulders of giants, and a lot of young people, not intentionally, don't realize that or understand what it took for us to get where we are now, and for us to be so open and be so free, wear what we want, go where we want, apply for a job and not get turned away straight away. And I include myself in this because I'm in the young-ish category, but sometimes we don't understand the lengths that our parents and grandparents had to go to just to get these basic things that we sometimes frivolously just throw away and disregard and don't see as important. So we need to be sitting down and we need to be having these conversations, because they are key in understanding each other and understanding what it takes to move forward. That's me.
Brilliant. Thank you very, very much indeed for that. And I think you were giving some pointers as well to how the two generations can coexist, because this is nothing new. It's nothing new. Each generation has that same challenge, but it's ensuring that we don't miss that mark of having that dialogue with our older ones. To you, Sister Polly, Adele, how
That's fine. That's fine. Fine. My very sentiment. Sorry, did I preempt you? No. Yeah, my very sentiment, as Jasmine was speaking, actually, the very thought was going in through my mind that the older generation or the younger generation should have more integration. We should integrate more, because this is quite interesting. About 5 Sundays ago, the youth leader, one of the youth leaders in my local church, approached me. She said, "Sister Polly, I'd like for you to co-host the youth service." I went, "Which decade are you talking about?" So she laughed. She said, "No, this decade, like now." I was rather taken aback. In fact, I felt quite excited. I was elated. I said, "You mean me? I'm an older person. I'm a grandmother." Said, "Right, your experience." And, I felt really, really special. So when I got up there to moderate, I said to the congregation, I said, "Well, don't look at me. Today I'm just a younger youth. I'm just an older youth." And it was really, really nice to play that part in a youth service. Can you imagine that, in a youth service? So I think if we, and Jasmine made a very important point, actually, that one of the things I don't know about in other local churches, but I know in my local church, I mean, you get complaints like, I'm an old school Tonian, so to speak. So all the old songs have been there, done that, the banner hymns and so on. And there was a song that was being, the Sankey, Ira-D, and the banner hymn, remember? Yeah, and don't forget the soul stirring.
Soul stirring.
And the sister after service, she was complaining bitterly to me. She said, "Sister Polly, all these songs, what happened to the old song? We don't know this song, we can't join it. We just sit down there with the hands full like mumuf." I don't know what mumuf is, but never mind. And it is very, very true that we need to have a balance, really. And I've said this to our pastor, I've said it to the worship leaders. We need to have when I'm a part of the senior ministries, and I actually led worship. And I struck a balance. I deliberately struck a balance that Sunday. I sang sound like We Have an Anchor That Keeps a Soul and Blessed Assurance. And I brought in a few of the younger generations and it integrated well. And you could see the senior brethren really enjoying service. So we actually need to have more of both sides participating, and have programs that I was thinking also, Jasmine, as you were speaking, we don't change the Bible. None of us change the word of God. But what I'm saying, we could put programs on that will encourage the younger generation to come in. Programs, we could have social evenings, invite young and old. And during these sessions, an older person could attach himself or herself to a younger person and have a conversation with that person. How was your week? And so on. Get talking about the past and get talking about the future, where the older generation can relate to that younger person and vice versa. And I think that really we would be good. Have a different perspective, have a different outlook. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I heard a young woman saying, sorry, let me just share this last point. I was very disturbed a few weeks ago. A young woman was saying, we were in a conversation, a few other people were there, and there's some people, what's the word now, rolling stone, that gathereth no moss. And I just looked at her, I said, where's your stance? I said, what you doing with your life? Where are you? Where are you? It's not just being on center stage. There's a little stage. You've got to climb on the lower rung before you can get to the top rung. I said, you can't, it's not the other way around. And she said, I'm churched out. I'm done with church. I said, run that one by me again. She said, I'm churched out. I said, if you're churched out, darling, you need to church right back in, because I don't know where you're going to get your eternal life. And sorry. Well, it's true. Your church door. Where you going? Where you going? Well, I think I've come too far. I might as well be churched in, So yes. So what I'm saying is that we
if I just pick
the
up,
young and the old.
yes, sorry.
So was somebody going to say
If I
something?
can just pick up on that. Yes, if I can just pick up on that point, I think both you and Jasmine made it about creating the spaces where there can be that sharing of experience, of life experience, because as you said, a lot of the, we're dwelling on this, we're saying younger generation, but a lot of people maybe under 25, maybe under 20, our teens, may not necessarily be aware of the struggles that their grandparents went through. So giving the opportunity for those who are 50 plus to talk about their experience, whether in a social setting or even in a service, that too can be appropriate to give.
Yes, you have something different. Have something different.
The sharing of life experience. That's all part of our journey as well.
It doesn't have to be the same worship team on a Sunday and greet this one and greet that one, and the message, the offering, and the announcement. End of, see you next Sunday.
I think we have a little bit of a technical glitch. Okay, I think we had a little bit of an issue. I think we're going to start getting people back in. Just give us like 2 minutes. But I think what I would say is just to piggyback off of what Monica was saying,
and even Adele and Jasmine, creating those spaces. And so creating those spaces for those intergeneral conversations. Now, for me, what I would add into that is literally something very practical. So even if it means like sometimes it's a little bit hard to get the youth out, and then you're going to say, oh yeah, you're going to sit with a senior and have a conversation. It's not going to sound as exciting as we know it will be very fruitful for them to be engaged in that kind of conversation. So maybe one of the ideas that I had is at family events, when you're having dinner together, or you go to an auntie's house, or you just all get together, just having a few questions for the adults to answer. Little things like, okay, so dad or uncle, little questions for them to answer, talking about their previous experiences growing up. Something like, what was one of your main challenges in your teens that you had to overcome? And little kind of conversation starters, maybe before dinner or after dinner, when everyone's kind of like sitting down, waiting for their food to settle. And then you're waiting on dessert, the apple crumbles in the oven, heating up, the custard is getting warm. And so it's something that the family can get together and be like, okay, cool, we've got some questions, we're going to hand them out, and then we're just going to have that conversation with each other. And even if it's in church, having somebody go up on the podium for like 5 minutes and just be like, okay, it's the same thing, here's a little question for you to answer. It's only going to take a few minutes. And so it's them sharing to everybody, and you're not asking someone to come out of their way to attend something else. We're all together anyway. Make it easy, make it simple, bring it into the environments that we have already. And then you can't help but to have those discussions and that kind of get together, that good old get to know me.
over a patty and a cup of tea. Thank you very much indeed for that. We froze shortly, but we're back. So thank you very much indeed to the panelists that have spoken thus far. I certainly have enjoyed the conversations that we've had and explored some of those areas, some of which might well have been quite tricky. But now we're going to ask Dr. Joe, if I might. He did mention his PhD a little bit earlier on. He's an accomplished author. You heard him mention that he's already published 10 books. But his latest publication is Flourishing in Babylon. And so how does your writing explore themes of resilience and thriving in challenging environments? And how do these themes feed into that broader discussion about changing the narrative in the Black community in Britain? I will repeat the question shortly, because I know you did want to comment on the last question that we had about that intergenerational connectivity.
I'm just wondering if we're alone no,
carry on,
in the world.
That's okay.
Well, let me just, before coming to the book, let me just quickly say something about the last question.
Yes.
I'm not very tribal. Right? I'm not very tribal. I'm not even very denominational. Right. So I would be wanting to suggest that moving forward, we need three kind of coming together. One is the intergenerational coming together. That is what it says. So the young people need to know about what the old people have gone through and how they're reading life now. The older people need to know how the young people are seeing things. And that conversation can be very, very fruitful. We also need an interdenominational conversation. We're not in this, Church of God Prophecy is not in this alone.
No.
We tell the same story as the New Testament Church of God and a lot of other Caribbean-led churches, African-led churches, and a lot of Black people in mainstream churches like Anglicans, Methodists, and so on. And we need to be talking to them as well and hearing how they are navigating, how they have navigated, and what we might learn from each other. And then I think there needs to be an intercultural conversation. We really need, as part of a wider Black community in Britain, we need to understand how they view us, how do we view them, and we need those conversations to happen. Some people live in different parts of the plantation, but we need to meet up, and we need to meet up, in my view, across all three of those zones as best as we can.
Very good point.
Can I talk about the book now?
Yes, you certainly can, sir.
So let me follow a couple of, I'm going to just bring up a couple of slides. We don't have the slides, but I'm just reading from them that I've used to introduce the book since it's been published in April, and I know I don't have much time. But this flyer on the screen is, of course, something that was developed by my publisher, SCM Press, and it's for when the book first came out. But to get into me and this book, I hope it's not my last, but it come, after several other attempts. We're going to refresh. So I try to answer the question, like, why did I write the book, right? Why did I write it? And I wrote the book out of a certain amount of anger, a certain amount of frustration, certain amount of righteous indignation. I wanted to write and to publish a counter-narrative challenging what I regard of the narrative that's going on in society about me and about us, which for me is victim-based very often, grievance-based, and a done-to kind of circular argument that's going on. And also the variation of it goes towards a sort of white-centered narrative about Black life. In other words, we are telling a story about how we are viewed through another lens. And I'm saying, no, I need my story told through my lens, not what other people say about me. So the book is about that. I wrote a paper back in 2021 or 2 on a similar topic that was published in the Black Theology International Journal, and I wanted to build on that for this book. Need for my will and treatment, if you like, my will and testament, as I said, it may be my final book, but I hope not, to say something about me and how I view the world. And so these are the reasons why I wrote it. It is the book, an informed, experiential opinion piece. It's a bit of a polemic, some people might argue, against anti-agency and anti-self-determination philosophy and theology. So my second and last slide that I'm speaking to, which you can't see, but in the book, I make a big play on the book of Jeremiah, but particularly chapter 29. Now, if you talk to most people in our church about Jeremiah 29, they will go to verse 11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. But there's a big but in there, because we need to do some hermeneutical work on these prophets. You can't go to Jeremiah or the whole book and just pick out chapter 29, verse 11, without understanding the context from which that comes. And of course, the context from which Jeremiah comes is a context of the Jews having been deported, many of them, from Judah to Babylon. And Jeremiah is writing to them saying, now that you find yourself in Babylon, and I'm comparing it with finding ourselves in England, yes, this is how you must do. And he suggests 5 or 6 things, and I'll say and say this and end on that. In his letter to the exiles, he told them, settle down, settle down. Plant and eat from what you plant. Build and live in the houses you build. Increase, do not decrease, he said, and pray for the peace of the land that you find yourself in. Now, my argument in the book is that if we were to adopt Jeremiah's philosophy in his letter to the exiles, I think we, Black people in this country, as coming from a different place, Africa, via the Caribbean to here, I think we have a wonderful template of how to succeed in this place and write the narrative we want to write, live the life we want to live, notwithstanding the challenges of being in exile.
Well, very well put, sir. And I do believe that the book is a very excellent read. I have my copy here. So please do go and purchase Joe's book, Flourishing in Babylon. And I think certainly from the things that we've spoken about this evening, the story is not all doom and gloom. We had 4 parents that came to this country that have planted and have grown and have enabled us to be, Jasmine mentioned earlier in her introduction, the first person from her family to go to university. We have a lot more of our Black British children going to university than we did back in the 60s, in the 70s. So a difference has been made. We have made a difference as a Black community to the population here in the UK. And I think it's something to be proud of, but there's a long way to go. There's a long way to go. And so the building blocks are there. And I think Anne-Marie made the point, what are we going to do with it? If we have the conversation and leave it there, then what is the point? But we need to build. And I'm expecting that my grandson, who at the moment is 6, may well be a future politician, may well be a business owner. He won't go and work in a factory. He won't go and work for the NHS.
Unless he owns it.
Unless he owns it. Unless he owns it. But that notion of entrepreneurialism, that notion of multiple income streams, because we can have that in the church too, and also establishing ourselves as a community of people that have a voice that needs to be heard from our perspective, as Joe has said in his book. We are able to flourish here in the UK, and we have flourished. So like I say, a lot more of us are home owners. We don't live in one room. As Sister Daphne was saying in hers, if you listen to all of her interview, she came here to one room with her husband. We live in our own establishment. So God bless you all, and thank you very much indeed. I want to thank all of the panelists this evening, Joe, Polly, Anne-Marie, Jasmine, for your valuable contributions and for making this conversation certainly a lot easier for me, because you really did put your all in, especially Anne-Marie with her passion. Thoroughly loved it. We'd also like to give a big shout out to Rachel, the technical support, who, even though we froze, there were frantic messages going backward and forwards, but she did a brilliant job. And thank you for holding down the fort, Anne-Marie. Really appreciate that. But Rachel McCoy, you're a star, an absolute star. So thank you one and all for joining us this evening. And if you weren't able to let friends come and join, share the link. Let them know about our conversation this evening, reclaiming and changing the narrative, as we celebrated this Black History Month. So thank you once again. And I think we're going to go over to a song that will be played for us, written by one of our own. But just before we do that, it's his birthday, or was his birthday on Thursday. So congratulations to you, Bishop Joe, for reaching the wonderful age of 72.
Or 27, depending on your view.
You don't look a day over 40. A day over 40.
Depends on how you count.
As they say, black does not crack. But thank you all very much indeed. And we'll be hearing a song right now written by our own Carol Clark, who's our national music director. Thank you one and all, and thank you once again, panelists.
Thank you.
Lord, we thank you. We just give you praise. Every moment from sunrise to sunset, let's celebrate and honor the name of the Lord. You are worthy to be praised. I just want to give you my praise, with my heart raised, lift up your name for guiding me through life's darkest maze. I offer endless praise. Help me sing. I just want to give you my praise, with my heart raised, lift up your name for guiding me through life's darkest maze. I offer endless praise. When I'm walking through the shadows, it seems like you're not there. You remind me that you love me and you care. I receive your blessed assurance. It sets my heart ablaze to offer endless praise. I'll praise you forever and ever and ever. Oh yes, I'll praise you forever and ever. I just wanna sing a song. I just want to sing you a song that stirs my faith, that stirs up my faith. To carry on, to carry on. I'll sing it over and over, all the day long, all the day long. By grace you make me strong. You make me strong. When I'm walking through the shadows, it seems like you're not there. You remind me that you love me and you care. I receive your blessed assurance. Oh, you set my heart ablaze to offer endless praise. This is not just a song. It is my living testimony and my story of walking through the shadow of death. And now even more I offer endless praise. Sing with us.